Hi, welcome to Skip's Corner, where I cover Nashville's baseball history and events and introduce you to players, coaches, and other fans. You may have heard me say before that I am a member of SABR. Well, that's SABR, Society for American Baseball Research. You can look more at sabr.org, sabr.org. I've loved being a member since, 2004 or 5. It's the best $65 a year I've ever spent because there's so much information, research information, biographies, stories, game stories, opportunities to know other people who have interest in what I have interest in, minor league baseball, baseball history. There are lots of opportunities for people who are more interested in sabermetrics, which is the part of measurements for baseball stats and things like that. I'm not interested in that as much as I am in the historical. I'm more of a traditionalist and love to research the way people think, the way they hit, but not necessarily their stats, unless it has something to do with their career. I want to tell you today about a book that I had an opportunity to write a chapter in, and it is a SABR publication. I wrote a biography about a man named Hank Schenz. I always try to write, not always, but I like to write for SABR books with a Nashville connection. Now, this one does, not all of them did. But this biography about Hank Schenz appeared in The Team That Time Won't Forget, the 1951 New York Giants. It's a SABR publication published in 2015, and it was edited by SABR members Bill Nolan and C. Paul Rogers III. Now, the one reason that I liked about Henry Schenz is an interesting story from a book that I had read. But let me tell you a little bit about the story. Hank Schenz was claimed off waivers by the New York Giants from the Pittsburgh Pirates midway through the 1951 season, setting in motion a unique connection to the most famous event in baseball history. At least I think it's one of the most famous. As told by Joshua Prager in his book, The Echoing Green, The Untold Story of Bobby Thomson, Ralph Branca, and the Shot Heard Round the World, manager Leo DeRocher discovers that Schenz's prowess with a spyglass might also be used to the team's advantage. Have I got your interest? A spyglass. Well, the events that led up to the historic pennant-winning home run by Bobby Thomson included a hidden weapon. It was Hank Schenz's Wollensak telescope. He had used it before to spy for signals from the center field scoreboard at Wrigley Field, and DeRocher would put the practice to good use. Now, after talking to Schenz and learning about the telescope, DeRocher decided to bring Herman Franks, the coach at third base, off the field and put him in the manager's office. If you remember pictures of the Polo Grounds where the Giants played their home games, the offices and the locker rooms were in deep center field. So he sent Herman Franks to the Giants manager's office to use the telescope and peer through the window so that Franks could not be seen stealing the opposing catcher's signs. And then he would push a button that sent a signal to the dugout and the dugout to the third base coaching box, and the third base coach could relay the signals. Usually that was DeRocher, but not always. Now here's the question. There are two questions, really. Could Bobby Thomson have known which pitch Ralph Branca was going to throw when he hit the pennant-winning home run for the Giants to capture the National League Championship? Well, Jim Schenz, Hank's eldest son, I had a good chance to talk to him back in 2015. It was a great conversation, and he explained why his father had a telescope in the first place, and it says a lot. Dad had no interest in astronomy, he says. In those days, everyone was looking for signs. That's the reason. It says a lot about baseball and how things haven't changed for a long period of time. But here's the other question that I have. It's question number 2. Did Larry Gilbert, the Nashville Vols manager, put the telescope to good use when Schenz was playing for Nashville in 1947? Well, the Hank Schenz story begins much earlier. He was born on April the 11th, 1919, in New Richmond, Ohio. It's a little village nestled about 20 miles southeast of Cincinnati along the banks of the Ohio River. A 1937 graduate of New Richmond High School, Hank turned down a scholarship to play college ball. And his son said even though he was offered a full ride at the University of Cincinnati, he was signed by the Cincinnati Reds and was later traded to the Chicago Cubs. Scout Frank Lane signed Schenz to a contract in 1938 after seeing him play semi-pro ball in Louisville, Kentucky, and Aurora, Indiana. And Lane liked his speed, and he said he could run and he could holler, he told the Reds. Well, Cincinnati sent Schenz to the Union City, Tennessee team in the Kitty League, but Schenz broke his thumb and he didn't play his first organized baseball game until 1939 when he was playing for the Salem Roanoke team in the Virginia League, and then assigned to Tarboro, North Carolina in the Coastal Plain League in 1940. He was traded to the Chicago Cubs before the 1941 season and moved up 2 classifications to the Cubs Piedmont League team at Portsmouth, Virginia, where he remained for the 1941 and 1942 seasons. He was an infielder and played second and shortstop. But at the age of 24, he enlisted in the United States Navy and was sent to the Norfolk Naval Training Station. And with experience as a postal worker for his father, he was assigned to the mailroom. But, as often was the case for professional ball players who had joined the military, he played baseball in Norfolk. Now, he was assigned to Hawaii in 1945 and continued to play baseball, and he also learned to play golf before being discharged on December the 14th, 1945. When he returned to baseball, he played for Tulsa and a few games with the Los Angeles Angels in the Pacific Coast League in 1946. Now, Nashville, the Cubs' other AA affiliate, was the next stop for the scrappy infielder after 3 early season appearances for the Cubs. In the first 26 games to begin the 1947 season, the Nashville infield had committed 50 errors, and manager Larry Gilbert was happy to have Schenz. With his hitting, his speed, his arm, and his defensive ability, Hank Schenz may be the best all-around player Nashville has had since Ed Sauer, a Nashville sports reporter, wrote. And the comparison was daunting because in 1943, Sauer had led the Southern Association in batting with a .368 average, with 113 runs, 51 doubles, and stolen bases, while also wrapping out 200 hits. But Schenz played in only 99 games during the season as an elbow injury sidelined him on May the 15th, and he was prone to injuries throughout his career. He returned to the lineup on June the 16th, but tasted misfortune again on July the 8th when he was spiked by Memphis second baseman Bert Hodges, and the injury included a broken bone in his ankle. On August the 5th, a month later, during Nashville's 9th consecutive victory, Schenz suffered another spike wound while attempting to tag out Memphis's Ted Kluszewski. After finishing the Nashville season with a .331 average, he was called up to Chicago, where he was expected to vie for the third base position with Peanuts Lowry in 1948. But by April, neither Schenz nor Lowry had satisfied manager Charlie Grimm. The Cubs revised their infield drastically. Schenz was moved to second base, and Lowry returned to the outfield. By May 31, Schenz was hitting .313, but he tailed off badly. And in early August, the Cubs claimed Emil Verbin off waivers from the Cardinals, and Verbin started at second base for the rest of the season. And Schenz finished the season with a .261 batting average. It was interesting talking to Hank Schenz's son. He recalled an unusual story that his father had told him. In one game playing second for the Cubs, his father ran out for a fly ball, and even though the outfielder called Dad off of it, they collided, and the outfielder suffered a broken collarbone. And his manager told him he hustled too much. Dad told him, if you don't want guys who hustle, then you don't want me. Well, he ended up at St. Paul, where his manager was Walter Austin, who said he was one of the smartest base runners he had ever seen. But on November the 4th, 1949, Schenz was sold to the Pittsburgh Pirates, whose general manager was now Branch Rickey. And Rickey had acquired Schenz for the Dodgers the season before while he was still with Brooklyn. So a transaction that did not occur could have changed the course of history. The Sporting News reported on August the 15th, 1951, that the Minneapolis Millers general manager, Rosie Ryan, sought to acquire Schenz from the Giants, the Millers' parent club, but at the last minute, the St. Louis Browns blocked the move by entering a claim for Schenz. Now, Schenz could have taken his Wollensak telescope to St. Louis Browns manager Zach Taylor instead of DeRocher. The Giants accomplished the feat of winning the pennant in a 3-game playoff with the Dodgers after going 50-12 for the last part of the season to tie Brooklyn at the end of the schedule, and the Browns did nothing. So the dream finish by the Giants and the subsequent World Series marked the end of Schenz's major league career. With the Giants, he got into 8 regular season games, all as a pinch runner, and the last was on September the 13th. His only World Series appearance was in Game 2 as a pinch runner for Wes Westrom, as the potential go-ahead run in the 7th inning. The New York Yankees won the game 3-1 and eventually won the World Series title in 6 games over the Giants. Now, it was not nearing the end for Schenz, but on December the 4th, 1951, the Giants sold his contract to the Oakland Oaks of the Pacific Coast League, where sports writer Arch Murray appropriately commented in the Sporting News, "It was with a pang of regret that they let him go because all hands at the Polo Grounds believe he played a vital role in the spiritual life that enabled the Giants to make their tremendous drive down the stretch," with no mention of the telescope. Now, he later on played for Tulsa, and after that season, he retired and settled in the Cincinnati area once again. And according to his son, he often pitched batting practice for the Reds at Riverfront Stadium. Jim told me his father and Sparky Anderson had become friends in the Texas League, where Sparky was playing second base at Fort Worth and Dad was at Tulsa. Sparky would invite him to come down to Cincinnati to help him out, and Dad lived at Deer Park, Ohio, a suburb of Cincinnati, and it was only a 20-minute drive to the ballpark. Dad admired Pete Rose, too, because that's how he played. Now, Hank Schenz died of a heart attack on May the 12th, 1988 in Cincinnati at the age of 69. Jim said when Dad's baseball career ended, it just ended. At almost 70 years of age in 1988, as a member of the Queen City Umpires Association, he umpired a high school doubleheader and afterwards was not feeling well and passed away. Ohio sports writer Jim Bishop reminisced, "One of the best bench jockeys of all time was Hank Schenz, who never stopped shouting from the start of the game to the finish. He not only riled the opposition, but he pitched batting practice, he caught batting practice, and he swept out the dugout." Pirates manager Bill Meyer once said, "Schenz can do anything but play regular," and circumstances and injuries might just have proved Bill Meyer right. So that's the story of Hank Schenz. Had one partial season in Nashville, 99 games in Nashville. Wondered if he had that telescope in his back pocket or in his equipment bag or back at the hotel or his apartment where he lived. But Leo DeRocher took advantage of it. The open-ended question is whether he had something to do with allowing Bobby Thomson to hit that home run on a pitch that he knew was coming. If you get a chance, read that book by Joshua Prager, Prager, The Echoing Green, The Untold Story of Bobby Thomson, Ralph Branca, and the Shot Heard Around the World. It's a great story about that particular instance. You may remember the name Bill Sharman. Bill Sharman was an NBA player and coach, is in the Basketball Hall of Fame. He was sitting on the bench for the Dodgers. So there was another Hall of Famer along with all those great baseball Hall of Famers that played in that game between the Dodgers and the Giants in that National League Championship. I hope you've enjoyed this segment of Skip's Corner. Certainly, let me know if you like what we're doing, if you have a suggestion. I hope you've enjoyed learning about Hank Schenz and his connection to Nashville baseball and to that 1951 World Series. I hope you'll come back again and listen in to more stories about Nashville baseball, and thanks for joining me on Skip's Corner.